Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice. I am Greek from the island of Lesbos. I am the writer of 3 books on female sexuality. I have been a journalist writing the Sex Files column for magazines for years. I'm a multimedia artist working on, female sexuality issues, particularly the dichotomy between our bodies and our minds, and how to bridge it. My quest is finding ways to live a non-binary sexual life and stay sex positive in this culture. So I'm on the side of freedom and individuality and speaking sexual words until you discover which ones express you more truthfully. Because I believe that the way for women to win our genetic advantage back is through sex. We are the sex. Today's guest, Genevieve, is a dear friend of mine, but also a colleague in the sense that she is working toward the same goal of freeing and embracing female sexuality rather than limiting it. So she is the founder and CEO of Skirtclub, which is a worldwide friendship organization, and she will talk to us about it in a second. She's from London, but she travels the world setting up Skirtclub parties and homes.
Private parties.
Yeah, private parties. So anyway, I would love to find out, Genevieve, welcome. I would love to find out how this came about, the genesis of Skirtclub. And then, of course, you can explain what it is for our audience.
With pleasure. Well, good afternoon, Eurydice. Lovely to see you again.
Me too.
So, Skirtclub, I started it 5 years ago now in London, my hometown. And really, it was a quest to discover my own sexuality and what constituted my own pleasure. I was confused. I had a rather willful-minded boyfriend at the time who was very encouraging of me discovering my bisexual side, but also very demanding of his own sexual needs. So I was struggling to find my own space, my own freedom to do that on my own and for myself. So I think what really struck a chord with me was when I visited probably one of the few sex parties I ever went to. And I realized that it was a fantastic event, but I realized that the women who were there with their partners were primarily performing for him.
For their partners?
Yes. I didn't see
for
them...
For their visual pleasure?
For his pleasure.
Right.
Right. So I would see a lot of him picking out a female at the party and her being sent to fetch the woman and her returning with her and playing with her for his pleasure. And I questioned whether she was truly doing that for her own desire. And then I questioned women as a whole, as a gender, how we tend to play for his pleasure generally.
Exactly.
And I wondered why we did that. I felt it was worth exploring what happened when you removed men from the equation. And now we have the answer.
Yeah, it's like what was happening in the harems for a couple of centuries, in the women's quarters, where all the women and the many wives were sequestered among themselves. I mean, that's the whole concept also of what Sappho was doing, because women were not allowed outside in public life, right? They were not allowed to speak and orate. But they had a private world that men didn't really enter. So within that world, rumor has always been women were exploring bisexually, exploring each other's bodies for their own fun. But nothing it has never really come out. It's like, the big female secret. So here we are, it's the 21st century, and it's on your website.
So it feels like we're going back in time just to demonstrate the same point all over again.
Right.
Of course, there's nothing new about being a bisexual female. That's I don't think that has always been the case, right? So now it's just a little bit more normalized, and Skirtclub certainly has contributed to that. In fact, I'd like to think that we led on helping women feel, okay with that. And
So
now I
you
think
talked
proud.
to your friends and they said, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I'd like to figure that out myself, right? I assume you had a group.
Yeah, there was a group of 10 of us. Of course, I put my hand up to host the party because I like hosting parties. And they brought their friends who brought their friends. And our first event was a small group of, say, 25 women. And, we just drank champagne all night and played games and invited a burlesque performer over. And we had a while of a time. So we thought we'd do it again. And then there were 50, and then there were 60. And now our parties host around 100 women per event.
That's wonderful. Okay, so when did you decide this can be something that you'll do professionally, that it's worth going, further, deeper with it?
I think when I was interviewed by many different magazines all at once. So there was Mary Claire, Elle magazine, Cosmo, and a couple of newspapers. And what I thought was really just a passion project, I suddenly saw was becoming a huge demand amongst women. My website crashed under the pressure, and so I had to rebuild and regroup and start a team.
So originally, this was just a fun project. You started a website to organize your friends and have parties, host parties at your house or friends' houses.
It was at my house, yeah.
Right, in London.
Yes, in London, in Shoreditch.
And then there was so much demand.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a problem. So we had to figure out a way to make it more regular with a ticketing application and a way to create a profile on a website and for members to meet one another before the party and chat, because many were arriving alone, in fact, all of them. And they wanted that comfort in knowing that it was a safe place to attend. They also wanted to verify that I was, the person I said I was. So I was meeting women for coffee. A lot of them were nervous, many doing this for the first time, some with the permission of their boyfriends, some without. Some were mothers, some were young students, all different types of women, and all desperate to find out about this other side to them and to do it in a way they felt comfortable with. And this was a luxurious option.
Right, yeah. And when you say find out about this other side, find out physically.
Mm-hmm. At first, of course, with women, they want to talk about it, right? So there's a lot of chatting. How did you discover? When did you discover? Have you done it before? Do you know how to approach a woman, flirting woman to woman? Women find it very easy to flirt with men, but you're in a whole new world when you try out the same tactics with a woman. So it's hard to read. So everyone's very nervous. There's a lot of champagne that gets drunk, and usually around the stroke of midnight, more action is taken. I think they get comfortable with the idea. They see everyone's in the same boat. They realize the party ends at 3 a.m. and they've got 3 hours to do something about it, so they make the move. And I rarely see anyone not participating. But of course, that's up to you.
And do you have fluff girls? I mean, do you have girls who will get naked first and will get this scene going?
Not
I imagine
really.
that would help. Or very eager participants.
I think what we do have are hostesses. Now, that is not their role to get naked first. Not at all. Their role is to introduce guests as they arrive to one another, so everyone feels comfortable having a conversation and a point of reference to talk about. And that's their role. So they're social lubricant. I don't have party starters, but there generally are regulars that come to our events who
feel more
perform that
comfortable.
role.
Yeah. Who know what they are looking for.
Yeah.
And go for it.
And I don't need to encourage anybody.
Right. Yeah, I imagine it just takes like the first or second, woman to be out there, and then everybody joins in. Yeah.
Yeah, it just takes one.
Yeah. So do you think, I have countless questions, but one of the first questions in mind is, do you think that basically everyone or nearly everyone has this curiosity, this within them that's part of heteronormative sexuality, to have that bi-curiosity?
We have a statistic on our website, which I took from a BBC documentary a few years back, that says 90% of women are curious about other women.
That's great.
I believe it's true.
Me too. Yeah. Within my limited experience, yes, it's true.
I mean, everybody wants to learn a bit about Skirtclub, and I have to say, of our membership, about 10% identify as 0 on the Kinsey scale, which is completely straight. So they are still coming to our events. I define that as curious, personally. So if they identify as straight and a 0 on the Kinsey scale, but secretly they're a 1, then I think you can make an assumption that most women are identifying that way, but are curious all the same.
Right. Yeah, they probably tell themselves, I'm just going to watch.
I hear that all the time. Genevieve, do you mind if I come along and just watch? Not at all, darling. We can have champagne in the kitchen. Whilst the others play upstairs, and you can just listen in.
Yeah, you can watch and, touch yourself.
Yeah, well, they never make it to the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, I feel that, partly thanks to pornography, there is a more accepting place in the dominant culture for, bisexuality, female bisexuality. So we women have that, permission because it's supposed to be what pleases the male, viewer and the male sex, the male gender. So, porn is geared for the male mind and particularly for the male gaze. And so, through that, we get that permission. So it's not as forbidding. And there is the assumption, the cultural assumption that you don't really have to choose, that you're not cheating on your boyfriend or husband if you're with another girl because there is no, I think the assumption is because there is no other penis, right? The penis being like the territorial phallic flag that like they plant on you, in you. I don't think they worry about dildos, right? I mean, you guys allow dildos?
It's not that we don't allow, it's that I just don't see them. I don't see strap-ons at our events, maybe once. First, I'm not encouraging because I don't want to increase the risk of STDs. But second, this is very much a first-timer experience, so they're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's all about the clit.
Yeah. And why not?
Yeah, no, absolutely, exactly. That's, it's so much easier for the men to reach orgasm. I mean, it really doesn't take much.
2 minutes.
Yeah. And women have to learn. So this is partly what you're doing. You're giving them like very basic sex ed in a safe space. And then they can, I imagine, take that back to whoever they're with, in the heterosexual world and say, oh, I would like this done. And, I want you to, whatever, touch me with your finger or your mouth or however in this way, because I just discovered I love it. Yeah. So that's an important, social education service.
Yeah, actually, there are many members who I see sort of flee at the hour of 1 a.m., an hour before the party ends, because they're hurrying home to their boyfriend or partner who's impatiently waiting, and she's sort of hot to go and big smile on her face. And it's, I have had 1 or 2 thank you letters from partners as well. Also, emails from husbands asking if they can apply on behalf of their wife. She's spoken about wanting to experiment, and this would be his gift to her. There's a few of those as well.
That's lovely. Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think that England has kind of more of a tradition of this because of public school and, being in like all girl education instead of mixed?
I don't know it's that. I think London especially has always been on the cutting edge. We tend to pioneer new music and new sort of movies, acting, sort of anything that's sort of theatre. It doesn't surprise me that this would come out of London. I think it surprised me how much London still leads on our membership. At least 50% of our members are from London still. And we're all over the world. We're in 13 different cities. Yet London still leads. And I thought English people were more reserved, less likely to experiment with sex. But now I see London has more underground sex clubs than any other city.
Yeah. No, London and New York have, well, in San Francisco, but we all know about that.
Yeah, that's San Francisco.
But the San Francisco scene is more regimented because it's been around for so long, and there are a lot of very clearly defined sexual subcultures, and so it's hard to find space for people who will participate in more than one. But yeah, London and New York, I imagine, in the West, would have the most interested women, of all types. But I have found in my own life, because I went to an all-girls school until I came to America at 15, and the absence of boys made everyone much more bicurious, and girls would come up to me because everybody realized that I was born on the island of Lesbos, and it's
the reputation precedes you.
Yeah, it's a coincidence, really, that there is that special meaning. But immediately, once it was understood, once the word was understood at whatever age that was in middle school, one after the other, my classmates would come to me in private and say, can you show me, instruct me, show me the arts of sex?
Since you were born on the island of Lesbos.
Yes, you're a lesbian.
Thoroughbred.
And, I went through a little crisis of thinking, oh my God, I'm a born pervert, and, the shame. But I overcame it because of all these requests. And I found that there was a sincere need. Because there is no education at all. We don't know anything. We all know that it's forbidden, and it's not something we talk about, and it's just shameful, and that's all we know. So there is no entry. So even that word, lesbos, was just like...
Exciting.
Yeah, it was an exciting word in that context. And I didn't really know anything. I didn't have access to any, especially lesbian porn at all. I knew like Sappho's poetry. I mean, I would, see like my dad's hidden, Playboy issues, but all I saw was like women with their boobs out, or naked girls. It didn't really tell me anything. I had no knowledge, but I tried as best I could to make it up, and meet that demand. And then when I came to America, it became definitely something that defined me. I found that throughout my years in college, again, bicurious women would come up to me, and whether or not they had boyfriends, ask me to show them how it's done, what it is, what it's done, and I couldn't really refuse. I felt I was moved, compelled to help. So that probably brought me in this, lifelong career of finding all kinds of different ways to bring it out in the open and make it easy and simple and honest and direct and accepted and, not secret and scary and silent and repressed. So here we are. Which cities do you have chapters, Skirtclub chapters?
Starting with London, we'll go west. New York, DC, Miami, LA, San Francisco, Sydney, Melbourne, Shanghai, Berlin, Vienna, Ibiza. Mm-hmm.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, it helps that I grew up traveling a lot as a kid. So I don't see another country being a barrier. I just see it as a new place to discover. I love the adventure. So it's been very easy for me, probably more than most, to set up in different cities at the same time. I went to school in Hong Kong as a child. I grew up with many friends from different countries. So I already had those relationships in place. So those were never barriers. But more recently, I've been focusing on building up our community online. And I think that's where our focus for this year and next year will be.
Yeah, because you want the average woman to be able to find you immediately and then find a party or an event, even if it's a lecture, something relatively easily. And one of these, or the easiest way would be to find it online.
Absolutely. And right now people hear about us word of mouth from friends or girlfriends or their husbands, and or they hear about us in the press. But we've never really spent any time trying to market ourselves. And part of me doesn't want to, because I feel like it should be kept an underground community, and I do really want people to come on a referral basis. But in order to grow a community, of substantial size, today we have 12,000 members. I'd love to increase that to 50,000 this year. We do have to have a better online presence.
Yeah. So how can a woman find you online? She puts in Skirtclub.
Oh, it comes up immediately if you put in Skirtclub. If you know about Skirtclub, then it's easy to find. But if you don't know about it...
And then once you join the website, it's a little bit like Facebook, right? It's a Bicurious Facebook experience. You can
yes.
make friends or find your friends. People will friend you.
That's right. And you can send private messages. You can send a flirt request. You can join different cities. You can see what events are on, where, at what time. Buy tickets now or ask to be notified later. You can see who's attending an event.
That's great. Yeah. And if you are in a city and you see other women who are also members in the city, but there is no event happening at that time, you can still message them and say, let's get together for coffee. And
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Nice.
I think it's important, not just the chance to meet someone, but the network itself, the knowledge that you're not alone in feeling this way. It's something that I was challenged with when I was younger, because I didn't know anybody like me. And now I've met 12,000 of them.
And I think 12 million is actually not even a stretch.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
But it's definitely given me comfort and the chance to discuss it. My friends and family don't want to hear about my sexuality. I don't want to put it on them either. It's private. And my private life should remain that way.
Yeah.
So I choose to discuss it with people who are in the same boat as me.
Yeah. And, I think it's important for our listeners to try and look into these things and discover who you are sexually younger rather than later. It seems that at least in the generation that preceded us, which is probably the first or second, depending on where you were raised, generation that was even at all sexually liberated, women waited until after they raised their kids and the kids were out of the house and maybe they divorced also, and then they had that brief period of figuring out what they like and what types of orgasms they could have and with whom, and take classes, have different partners before, I guess lack of interest due to old age, would put an end to it. So it is, this Skirtclub is one of the easiest ways to kind of experiment and discover what else you like without, being out there in some sort of like unsafe environment.
Right, like a Tinder environment where you never really understand who you're talking to.
Exactly.
All our members are, I wouldn't say vetted, but verified by me. So I know who's in the club.
Yeah.
So there's one particular demographic that's coming up a lot at the moment, which I'm particularly proud of. And it's the lady who's recently divorced and the kids have left home, grown up. And she's seeking sexual fulfillment for the first time.
Can you imagine?
These women have also become my friends. I spend a lot of time talking to them just to understand, how they've got to 48 and never slept with more than one man. I
in this day and age, yeah.
I couldn't imagine my life being that way.
Yeah.
But it's like a kid in a candy store. Suddenly this whole world has just opened up to them and they don't know where to start. and it's almost too much. And they're also with the hangover of their childhood, which tells them never make a man wait, never give your virginity away to anyone unless they're going to marry you first, never sleep around, you'll be called a slut. So they come with all these hang-ups, and they're terrified, they're giving me false names so that they can protect their identity. And I'm trying to reassure them that it doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it. Just be yourself. It's okay. No one else is as hung up. But they're really struggling.
Yes.
Really struggling. And it's such a pleasure to watch them let go and discover for the first time.
Yes, how to come. Or new ways of coming. Yeah. Well, I'm also, I have to say, I have had the same experience with this podcast, and I haven't even done it for that long, but one of the most shocking realizations has been on the podcast to find out how sexually repressed contemporary women still are. It's surprising that so many are. I thought that we're in the third wave of feminism right now. So there were the feminists who were active before I was born, I think, in the 60s and 70s. That was the first wave of feminism in America. Then they during the Vietnam War, that whole era. And we're not even going back to the suffragettes. We're just talking specifically about sexual liberation, burning the bras, the personal is political, nakedness is beautiful, that whole thing, equal pay, etc. Then there was the second wave of feminism, which is what I caught the back end of when I first came to America, when I was really young. And it was... they called it post-feminism. So I remember identifying in the East Village and West Village as a post-feminist, and I was a baby. It was like the 90s, 80s, and end of 80s and 90s. So we thought that feminism had already accomplished its goals. And now it was okay to, be with men again, and we didn't have to hate men, blame men, all that stuff, because we'd gotten our, sex lib experience, and we could sleep with anyone we wanted, and we had the pill, and and I think then a combination of changes happened. The first one was AIDS, which kind of like split everybody up, because men had to choose whether they were straight or gay, and by default women did too. So I had a lot of friends back then who identified as lesbian but were straight. They slept with guys as well as women, but they identified as lesbians mostly for political reasons. Like, I feel I'm a lesbian, I present myself to the world as a lesbian, I have a girlfriend, but I'm really sleeping 90% of the time with guys, boy toys or younger men or all of that suddenly ended. If you were a lesbian, you had to be with women, and if you were gay, you had to be with men, because people were dying. And I think that, brought up like a new fear of sex. Condoms. Suddenly, people found out about condoms again, which I had never seen one until the end. People were dying before I saw one. I didn't know what you did with it. I remember the first time I saw one, I was with a friend of mine who was mostly gay. So he wanted to try sex with a woman. I was like, well, you have to wear the condom. So he went and bought one. He didn't know how to put it on. I didn't know what to do with the thing. And I guess we must have placed it wrongly, and it rolled out immediately, and he had to see through. The dog ate the condom. We had to stop and run the dog to the vet, worried the dog would be poisoned. This is so far from today's reality, because I feel that because of that shift with AIDS and say no to all that stuff, as well as say no to that lifestyle, led us to this new generation that is very traditional once again. And then this third wave of feminists who I feel that are much more focused in consent, describing sexual harassment, sexual assault, especially in the workforce, kind of putting an end to all of that, to the objectification of the woman outside the sexual context, but they're not so focused in liberating female sexuality per se. And I have found that both the young girls, meaning teenagers who I speak to on the podcast or in private, and their mothers are surprisingly repressed and ill-informed about all the possibilities that the female body, the female genital body has access to, and how long and diverse their pleasure can be. So it's just needed to kind of like push with this educational sexual as well as social education for women, and make sure that they don't wait until they're done with their child rearing and the husbands, and to find out and experiment and ask questions.
Yeah, that's
They
certainly
can just
changing now.
Google Skirtclub right now and ask the questions.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. I think with today's women, of course, they're not waiting, and they're not hesitating in the slightest. Attitudes with Gen Z are completely different to mine, and anyone's that I know, they are way more liberal. They think being straight is boring, and they are up and down that fluidity spectrum like there's no tomorrow. They just don't mind. I mean, they'll walk into my event on an Instagram story announcing it to the world, even though we ban cameras and phones, because they have nothing to hide.
Right. Yeah.
It's quite refreshing to watch this. I mean, personally, I don't like putting myself out there as much as they do, but I like that nothing holds them back, and they're not afraid. In fact, they're fearless, which can also have consequences. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know my daughter's generation and group, and I think they are younger than Z.
Gen Z, I don't know where Gen Z ends.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But I know that they are very controlling of their image, and they're very judgmental, morally, judgmental. So just before them, there was a movement for polyamory and gender fluidity, but I think that is still in the margins. From what I'm meeting, that's still the margin, and the vast majority are coupling in traditional ways, and they have like 2 Instagram accounts, for example. So the private one, yes, everything goes, but then the public one is curated.
Very polished, no doubt.
Right, yeah. Yeah, like 20 filters. So it has nothing to do with what they actually look like.
It's the image of what they want to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that what you are offering is the experience. So the fact that you're not allowing cell phones, that you're not allowing photos, I think is wonderful and refreshing, in this extremely digitalized world where we can't put our phones down. We don't know who we are without our phones. I think it's very healthy to be able to put your phone down, at least in order to experience your body and give your body time to find itself as it is in the world of nature. And that is a way to find inner balance, spiritual and psychic balance, not just the sexual experience, but also the time that you allow yourself away from media, social media, the web, that whole screen life, screen time, which is, a little bit of a brain rot too when it's done to such excess, right? So we need physical time, the same way that we need like meditation or yoga or like a walk on the beach. We need, time to explore sexually with women, with new friends, with whoever we can give ourselves permission to. And the Skirtclub seems to me to be the easiest to, find social permission for.
It's interesting you use the word permission, because I find myself quite frequently saying to not just my team, but some of my guests, if all you need to hear from me is you have the permission to play, then I give it to you, but you don't need to hear it from me. And that seems to do the trick half the time. Just keep saying, stop asking for permission. It's yours to give. I don't know what you're waiting for.
They're waiting for someone else, like you, to give them that permission. Yeah.
Well, come on in. The gates are open, and I feel so. Something I love about this job, and I've had this my 13th career, I think, but in this job anyway. What I love most is Monday mornings when I get these lovely emails from guests who've attended an event over the weekend. And they'll read to the words of, "Oh my God, I've changed. This has changed my life. I feel so differently about myself. I feel more confident. And I'm not hesitating anymore about what I want from life. I've met women who inspire me. I now know who I truly am." And that sense of freedom that comes from just liberating yourself to do as you please, and asking your body what it wants, and not being told. Or trying to fit in with society when you don't.
Exactly, yeah. And in fact, you do fit in. It's just that we don't have the words for it, or at least out in the public realm, we don't have the words for it yet.
Yeah.
That's why we speak sex here. And that's why, I encourage everyone to put it in words, no matter how frightening or, difficult it may be, in public, with friends, with women, men, not just the lovers, not just the potential lovers, but also including the potential lovers. Just say what you like, say what you want, say what you would like, and just by, I think, saying it, it becomes easier to then, take the next step and experience it.
Yeah.
Because you realize it's not that frightening at all.
Not really.
Right.
I just finished reading this great book called Tell You What You Really Want by Justin Lehman, and it talks about having fantasies and then putting them into practice, and how sometimes some ideas are just best left as fantasy, but you will never have a fulfilling relationship unless you can discuss it.
Exactly.
So having secrets or pent-up desires will only lead to problems later down the line. And if you're concerned that your husband or boyfriend won't ever understand that the fact that you're interested in women and you want to experiment with that idea, then he's probably not the right partner for you.
Exactly, yeah.
The sooner you realize that, the better, quite frankly.
But I think that many of us can actually educate our partners and, help them evolve as we evolve. And, we never, like, even this idea that, like, find out who you truly are. It really means find out who you truly are at this precise moment in your life. Then a month from now or a year from now, you may want something different sexually. You may switch and be a bottom or be a top, or, want to experiment with, some other sexual practice. And you have permission to do that too. It's just, allowing yourself the fluency and the facility to become, sexually alive and sexually active, and not worry about how things, look or what they mean, because they don't really mean anything.
They don't. Yeah, no need to read so much into it. Women have a tendency to overthink.
Right.
Stop thinking.
Yeah,
just go with the flow.
Yeah, exactly.
And don't overanalyze it in the morning either.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just fun. It's a way to get out of yourself. It's a way, I mean, for me personally, and I think that's a useful way to think about sex, is that for me, sex is the liberation from the self, from the boundaries of this self that otherwise I'm stuck with in order to function in society. So during sex and during orgasm, we're not who we are as our brother knows us, or our mom knows us, or our kid knows us, or our boss knows us, or whatever. All of that, all of those constructs that we have to take on in order to be understood by others, and in order to fit in and get homogenized, all of those fucking constructs we can let go. We just, get out of that self that limits us. And it limits us by necessity, so we can fit into something that can be understood by whoever is around us, whoever we coexist with. But in the moment of orgasm, we're not that. We're something so much greater, something that cannot be named, like this greater, consciousness, right? And it's brief, but female orgasm lasts much longer than male orgasm. So even though it's brief, it's actually long enough. And at that moment, you're not you. You're something just so much bigger and more alive.
It's wild. I think my orgasm this morning was 3 minutes. I timed it. That's a new record. But it's a great way to start the day.
That's a long time. Yes. Yeah, that is a great way to start the day.
Yeah, it's euphoric. And I don't know why you'd want to live your life without one of those every day.
Exactly. I agree. It's, like physically cleansing, you detox, you kind of like reset. You push that reset button and, you're young again, new again, right? Yeah.
For me, especially, it relaxes my mind. And I tend to think too hard. Guilty. But it's a great way for me to get out of my head. And then I can think more clearly.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I really would like in the ideal world to stay away from gender binary distinctions, but I feel that the way society is set up, the way we think is more male, because the words are male. They've been made up by men to kind of support this system within which we function, which is
they developed the system,
patriarchy,
so,
right?
It's kind of how it happened,
right? So especially for us women, but for men too, who are way too masculine and need to find their feminine side and that happy, sexy side. For men and women, the time of orgasm is the female time. You're not in your male thinking, word, calculating numbers head, judging, all of that. No, you're deep in the body. That's what we women are. We generate life. We have this magic ability to take the pleasure and make it into new life, and that miracle happens in that space of female, and again, female identified joy.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Coming back to men, the more masculine type versus the more feminine type. Obviously, it's a huge spectrum. And in my previous Skirtclub life, I was working in the financial industry, so I was surrounded by men continuously, of course, of the sort of alpha male type, and it was very #MeToo. So I was surrounded by that, and probably one of the reasons that I was propelled into this business to get away and find the antidote.
Interesting.
I did not enjoy it. It was one of those situations where no matter where I was in the office, there was some kind of remark about either make the tea or, I'd get my bottom smacked in the kitchen now you'd wonder why I would put up with that. But the reality is in those days, it was kind of normal.
Yeah, it was, yes.
And you just don't really...
You had to go along with it. You didn't have an option.
But when you're one of two women in the office, what option do you really have? And you want to keep that job, right? So you don't really say much about it, and it's not really physically hurting you. So you don't think it's a problem until you get out of that industry. For me, especially, and now, of course, I work in the polar opposite of that environment, and I'm surrounded only by women. And the men that I've picked to be in my life are of the feminine sort, so they are completely in touch with their emotions, and it's just so. Me as a person, I feel way more myself, relaxed, happy to express, not hesitate about what I'm about to say next for fear of criticism, and I have flourished entirely, and it's due to the people around me. I think I've found my environment to thrive. So. As much as I started Skirtclub really in some way because I was so upset with the current situation, the patriarchy and the patricism I was experiencing. I also recognize that men can help you become your true self, as I have experienced. So there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to re-educating men and their opinions of women. If I can help towards that, and I'm by building stronger women, I think I can, then that will be probably my life mission.
Yeah, and that's a noble one. No, I think that, I mean, when I put myself in the place of a man, and especially a young man initiating sex, having not really done it enough before, our assumption that just because they have the penis that gets erect, they should know what to do, and women can just lie back and be pleased is insane. I think I'm mortified on behalf of the men who have to kind of like do all that work without any knowledge. I mean, they don't know much about the female anatomy. They don't know much about the vagina and how it works and how it functions. No one is doing like show and tell.
Right. And the pressure's on. And I actually, when I was growing up, I remember feeling sorry for men because all that pressure was on their shoulders to earn the wage, take care of the family financially, be the man. I actually wouldn't like to be in that position. As women, we're given that space at least to breathe. Now, of course, there are consequences. You're then expected to take his lead. But luckily, we live in a time where times are changing, so it's not that case for us now. But I think back to my parents, my mother was never given that choice or that freedom to choose. So it was just tough luck. And if you were a strong-minded female in those days, you were not going to have a happy life.
Yeah, my mom too. She only knew one man. That's it. And he called it the veto power. He was like, our family is a democracy, but someone has to have the veto power, and it's me.
Oh.
And it's like, wait. So why do we all vote? We would have like a family council, and we would take a vote, and then he would use his veto power.
That is just ridiculous.
It's like, okay, Greeks and democracy.
Right. Sounds like a lot of governments in the news at the moment.
But on the other side of the coin, and every coin has the other side. We women tend to associate sexual pleasure with monetary pleasure, and this whole concept of provider sex is so deeply ingrained in us. So, which is why Skirtclub makes sense right now, because you can still experience your provider sexual relationship and have your experimental, sexual life. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we are right now in a stage where we're still holding on to this idea that the man's gonna take care of us. Sexually, financially,
right. Safety net,
all that stuff. Yeah, and we'll play around, but within what is okay with him, so long as he pays the bills. So a future step would be to kind of revisit that whole concept.
We're in transition right now, so
right.
It's not, the lines are not clear.
No.
We're sort of trying to get away from a traditional marriage, man meets woman sort of relationship, to one where it's completely equal. yet she still has to raise children, and she's still reliant on him to bring home the cash to support them. So it's very hard to figure this. I mean, I believe within 20 years this will all be straightened out. We're just in that period right now where we're trying to find our way.
Right. Yeah. No, it's very complicated right now. But so long as he gets to, name the children and name the wife, he has to support them, So my understanding of it right now is that if we could simply separate relationships from mothering and fathering, that would be a good, beginner step. So we could be ideally equal sexual partners with our boyfriends and girlfriends. But once we decide to procreate, if we want to do it in the traditional way, then yes, the man will support the woman while she has the babies and raises them and works and, chips in. But she has so much extra labor that then he's being the provider still makes sense in that setup. But until then, it would be nice if, women don't feel bound to please their boyfriends just because they happen to be the ones with a penis. If there is if they don't think that the relationship is going to lead to, having babies, I think they should revisit how much compromise they're willing to make sexually, and take the lead more. And say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to try out. And, Skirtclub is an example of it. And then eventually, they could take the man, their partner, and experiment further. Introduce what they know.
The women I'm seeing today, the younger they get, the more they are not seeking out a relationship. They're seeking out pleasure, and that alone. They are married or in love with themselves. That is their first priority.
Yeah.
I even have a member of my team who's getting married next month to herself. She's set the date for her wedding.
Wow. Wow.
Guests are invited. I don't know, there's a gift list. But I thought that was quite inspiring. And why not, actually? If you've not met Mr. Right, the person you want to be with forever as your soulmate, and I have, so I know how that feels. Why would you waste your time on anyone committing or to them and sacrificing experiences that would actually enhance you as a human being in both character and personality? I think it's a waste of life.
I agree. Yeah, I agree, and I support that. And I think that women are actually going through that stage right now, perhaps for the first time in history, in written history, where they're experiencing sex as separate from love. And it is revolutionary.
For us, but not a new concept to men. I mean, my God, there's been prostitution since day one. It's the oldest industry in existence. Men have long used prostitutes for sexual relief and have a wife at home. Very common.
Yeah.
Now suddenly women are enjoying sex outside of their marriage and everyone's up in arms.
Yeah.
Or embracing it for the first time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's incumbent upon us women as the sex gender, which we are, because we give birth, we are the sex gender. So as the sex gender, I think it's incumbent upon us to demonetize sex. So, not pay the boys to have sex with them, which kind of continues this transactional sex life, which I don't think is healthy. But separate, as so many now have begun to do, separate sex and sexual intimacy within the sexual scene from love, from romantic love, which is one of the ways patriarchy has of controlling women, because in romance you give up everything for the love, and the love will save, and the love will heal, and the love will change, everybody. Not true. So if we take that whole Disney-fied version of romantic love that started from the Romance era with the knights and the damsels in distress and all that, and continues until now, if we take that out of the sexual arena and are able to find a sex life that yes, it has, of course, it has emotional wealth within the sexual scene. So when you're intimate with a sexual partner and you find pleasure and orgasm together, at that time, you feel love, you feel affection, you feel intimacy, it's a very warm and emotional experience, but it's not a lifelong commitment. It's not like that romance as it's described in all those books of eternal promises.
You can blame Disney for blowing up that idea.
And Harley Quinn, and I don't know, there's a lot of big money being made
out of fantasy,
out of romantic fantasy. Yeah,
which is such a shame, because those ideals are instilled in young minds, and if they don't fulfill them, they feel that they lost out on something which might not have ever really existed.
Yes, and as you said, women waste years, decades, often the best decades of their lives when they're still young and beautiful and energetic, trying to get those romantic ideals to work.
Right.
They put so much time and work into it.
So much.
And, they get betrayed because, you cannot own and possess and control another human being. You just can't, unless you think of them as your slave.
Right.
You can't.
You're best putting that energy into yourself.
Yeah.
Making yourself happy and giving yourself the best life.
Exactly.
And your number one goal should not be meeting a partner.
Exactly. And should not look for happiness, salvation, understanding in that other, in the other, but in yourself. And, if there's a partner who joins you in this journey, that's wonderful.
He's along for the ride,
but
it's your ride.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I think we could conclude today's episode with this. I love that ending. Thank you for listening to another episode of Speak Sex. I'm Eve Eurydice, and I'll talk to you next Friday. Love and kisses. Thank you, Genevieve.
Merci.